Hi guys, so glad you're here to join me. A little news, the camera did not go with my laptop, so I'm going to try it this way, see if it's better than my phone, so let me know in the comments. I also want to say welcome, I got a couple new followers, so welcome to you guys. Alright, get you your comfy spot, and get you your drink, and of course I got my tea. And let's get going. Okay, today we're going to be talking about the largest mass UFO sighting in U.S. history, called the Battle of Los Angeles, or some people have referred it to the Great LA Air Raid. It was thought to be an attack on the continental U.S. by who they thought was Imperial Japan. Okay, you have to understand that it happened 3 months after World War II and 1 day after a bombardment of Elmwood. It's somewhere near Santa Barbara on February 23rd. So as you can see, everybody would be on high alert and why they would think it was Japan. Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox, called all of it a false alarm, but the newspaper reports at the time were saying it was a cover-up, but not of a UFO cover-up per se maybe, but of an actual invasion by the enemy, and they just didn't want to be honest about it. Some who investigated the incident in 1979, one being the U.S. Coast Artillery Association, believed it was a weather balloon, surprise, that started it and concluded with, concluded that once it started, imaginations created all kinds of different targets up there in the sky and everyone went along with it. So like mass hysteria. In 1983, the U.S. Air Force History Association attributed the event to a case of war nerves. Now that'll come in again, so remember war nerves. And triggered by a lost weather balloon and exasperated by stray flares and shell bursts from adjoining batteries. See, in the months following the Imperial Japanese Navy attack on Pearl Harbor on Hawaii on December 7, 1941, and U.S. entry into World War II, public outrage and paranoia intensified across the country, especially on the West Coast, because, they had real fears of Japanese attack or an invasion. I mean, that would be the first place it would come, on the West Coast. For example, in Juneau, Alaska, residents were told to cover their windows for nightly blackouts after rumors that Japanese subs were lurking along the southwest Alaskan coast. And there was also rumors that a Japanese aircraft carrier was cruising off the coast to the San Francisco Bay Area, resulting in the city of Oakland closing their schools and issuing blackouts. They also installed air raid or civil defense sirens on the patrol cars of the Oakland PD. Now that night, those sirens were blaring throughout the city and a radio silence was called. All the rumors were taken so seriously of imminent attack that the Walt Disney Studios in the lot in Burbank, California, they went there, set up a bunch of searchlights and a command post or whatever to protect that facility and a bunch of different factories that were around that helped with the war effort. So as you can see, paranoia was up and everyone was on high alert. I mean, it was a very stressful time. Now, on February 24th, 1942, The Office of Naval Intelligence issued a warning that an attack on the mainland California would be expected within the next 10 hours. That's crazy. I'd be scared. That evening, many flares and blinking lights were reported in the vicinity, and an alert was called at 7:18 p.m. and was lifted at about 10:23 p.m. But things started happening again and ramping up in the early morning hours of February 25th. So more air raid sirens went off at 2:25 throughout LA County. A total blackout was ordered, and thousands of air raid wardens were called to their positions. At about 3:16 a.m., the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade began firing 50 caliber machine guns and 12 gauge anti-aircraft shells. Eventually, over 1,400 shells in total were fired. So, that's a lot of firepower. So, first of all, I'll be scared out of my mind. Second of all, if they can't hit something with all that firepower, then either their aim is bad or there was something protecting whatever's up there from not getting hit. Pilots of the 4th Interceptor Command were alerted, but they swear they stayed grounded. No planes were ever deployed. They were just on high alert. The artillery fire continued till about 4:14 a.m. and the all clear was sounded and the blackout order lifted at about 7:21 p.m. Now, several buildings and vehicles were damaged by shell fragments, and 5 civilians died as an indirect result. 3 were killed in a car accident during all the melee. You know, there was so much going on, and people weren't paying attention, and they got into a car accident. And there was 2 heart attacks due to the stress and the shock of a 2-hour ordeal. I would probably have a heart attack too, poor people. All this, of course, ended up on the front page of millions of newspapers up and down the West Coast and across the nation. The government, they were on this real quick, of course, you know, like always. They wanted to suppress gossip, but I don't know. I think all it did was do more damage than it did good. But that's just my opinion. Within hours, the Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox, held a press conference saying the entire thing had been false alarm, and due to anxiety and war nerves, there goes that word again, that was immediately followed by a statement from the Army the next day. They reflected General George C. Marshall's assumption that it was by enemy agents using commercial airplanes in a psychological warfare campaign to generate mass panic. UFOs weren't the only things that was mentioned as a reason for the cover-up. For example, so these airplanes coming from some secret base in Mexico, or that Japanese sub stationed off the shore had the capability to carry such airplanes? And if so, why wasn't anybody warned about it or told about it at a time? Or why was it the first time anybody were hearing about it? Representative Leland M. Ford of Santa Monica called for a congressional investigation, saying, quote, "None of the explanations so far offered remove the episode from the category of complete misinformation." He also said this was either a practice raid to throw a scare into 2 million people, or a mistaken raid, and or a raid to lay a political foundation to take away Southern California's war industries. Now, I want to get into some eyewitness accounts because for me, that's the most important in all these situations. The first one comes from a young woman named Katie, who was one of that volunteered to be an area warden. She had gotten a phone call from her district supervisor, and she was told of the alert and asked if she could see an object in the sky that was real close to her house. Without hesitation, she ran over to her window and looked into the sky, and in her words, this is what she saw, quote, "It was huge. It was enormous. It was practically over my house. I had never seen anything like it in life." Excuse me. And then she went on to say it was hovering in the sky and hardly moving at all. It was a lovely pale orange and about the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I could see it perfectly because it was very close and very big. Katie also said that the anti-aircraft searchlights had this thing completely surrounded. The object, or lit up, the object, she went on to say that they sent the fire pilots out, even though they said they didn't, and they went up, and then she watched them go back. She watched them in groups approach it and then turn away again, and they were shooting at it, but it didn't seem to matter. Like, none of these bullets were hitting this thing. She then said the U.S. fighter planes did attack the object, and she also said it was like the 4th of July, but much louder. They were firing at it like crazy, but they couldn't touch it. Those are her words. She also said, "I'll never forget what a magnificent sight it was. Just marvelous. And what a gorgeous color." End quote. Some non-military witnesses have said, who were using their binoculars that night, described a large orange object that moved slowly over the coast between Santa Monica and Long Beach. Now, none of the articles mentioned an unknown object, and none of the locals were really interviewed, and if they were deemed incredible, or not credible. And I hate it when they do that. To me, that's bullying. I mean, that's just my opinion, but let's continue. Incredibly, this object traveled 20 miles in approximately 30 minutes and then disappeared. Now, an employee of the Los Angeles Herald Express said he was certain many of the artillery shells had hit their target with no effect. And, as you can see right here in this picture, you can clearly see this is an enhanced. You can clearly see something pinned right in the middle of that spotlight. And to me, what looked like a bunch of other ones flying across. Now, some say they only saw one object, but there was many other people who said they saw a group of objects moving slowly, sometimes hovering. Many people said they saw U.S. planes approach the object before the shelling began, even though, remember I said the 4th Interceptor Command maintained that they were only on alert and they never deployed any airplanes. Some reported that 2 Japanese airplanes had been shot down, but no wreckage of any kind ever was found. None. Absolutely no wreckage of any kind was ever found. So if they did hit something, I don't know where the heck it went. And if they didn't hit something, either they were a bad aim or something was protecting it. However, some reports stated 2 2 downed aircrafts were found, one in the sea and one in the San Bernardino Mountains, and that they were of extraterrestrial in origin. Some saw a dozen smaller objects in the sky that night. They were said to have floated, glided, and it could not be hit, not by one single shell. And that's crazy to me. I just don't get how they couldn't hit it. One retired officer to have said decades afterwards, "We saw something, but it wasn't anything definite. It seemed to be something circulating slowly around." Now, some facts that were stated in Volume 1 of the Army Air Force in World War II, an official history, which was some kind of report that was 3 pages long. 1. After the war, the Japanese swore that they hadn't had any airplanes in that area at the time. They were like, "Look, we're here, we're definitely not there." So I don't know what it was. Number 2, much of the confusion came from shell bursts caught by searchlights, which then were mistaken for enemy planes. Number 3, a careful study of the evidence suggests weather balloons, of course, may have caused the initial alarm. You know, the typical weather balloon excuse, which is always their answer for everything, which to me just invalidates all these eyewitnesses' accounts, because not every single one of them is a weather balloon. Come on. Now, according to official documents included in the Majestic 12 or MJ-12 reports, which, if you don't know, MJ-12 was a government organization started by President Truman to investigate UFO sightings. So, in the Marshall Roosevelt memo, dated March 5th, 1942, claimed that 2 alien craft had been recovered after the battle. In a quote, it was said, "This headquarters has come to determine the mystery planes are in fact not earthly, and according to secret intelligence sources, there are in all probability of interplanetary origin." There's that word. So, I don't know what you think. Was it a UFO? Scoping out things, which they have been known to do in and around military installations and bases in wartime. Or was it mass hysteria or war jitters, as they called it? Or was it really the enemy? I don't know. What do you guys think? I know that it was definitely not a weather balloon, and I don't really think it was the enemy either. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. I mean, this is Amy's view, but I would like to know your view too. I mean, that's what we're here for. So, the next time I'm going to be doing another UFO story. A sighting. And it's one you might not have heard of. But, in the meantime, if there's one you would like for me to talk about, just let me know in the comments. Or if you have any ideas for future shows, let me know that too. Because I'm up for anything. After this next one, I'm going to go back to a true crime story. But I thank you all for joining me. And if you like what I do, hit the like button and the subscribe button so you know when I'm uploading my videos. And I'll see you next time on Amy's View.